All right, we are recording. We are live, ready. We're back again. Board Game Secret Show episode 3. All right, I made it 3 weeks in a row. I think that's the longest I've done anything consistently in my life. Where do I start? All right, if you clicked on this video, it's likely because you either feel pity and you just want to let this thing run for me, give me some watch time. I really appreciate that. Walk away, walk the dog, play with the kids, something like that. Let it play. Turn volume all the way down. I appreciate it either way. I'll never know. I will never know unless you comment on it, and then I'll probably be sad, but still, it's totally fine. But if you clicked on it, you probably also saw a thumbnail that has something to do with 5 games that I wish I had the game group to play. And I don't know if anyone else is like this out here and are painfully introverted and have a hard time making friends. That's me. So my main game group is my wife, and then when I can hoodwink my kids, there's a couple others. We can get some 4-player games to the table, but it's just not as often as I'd like, and that game group might not like some of the really dorky things that I'm pining to play. So I'm gonna go over those today. But first, we have a couple other subjects here. Gonna go over a FOMO game of the week. Also, I'm playing a bunch of stuff. We're gonna talk a little bit about that. I did get 7th Citadel to the table. I got through intro plus, and I have some thoughts there. And then we're gonna just go ahead and get into the main topic. So first and foremost, my FOMO pick of the week is actually nothing that's on crowdfunding right now. I mean, there's a ton of stuff out there. I could talk about Roth, Galactic Cruise, Veiled Fate. What else? Robot Quest Arena, which I really liked. There's an expansion there. I could talk about all that stuff. But other creators have just like drilled that into the ground. I mean, you know, is it a thing now we get 10 videos on the same exact day for the same exact game? I don't know if you look in your subscription feed or if anyone ever just looks there or just looks in home. So you may not see this, but in my subscription feed, anytime a Kickstarter drops, I get the same video 10 different times. So I am a little bit reluctant, even though I still would like to have access to that stuff. So maybe I'm just being a hater, but I wanted to be a little bit of a contrarian here. And there's something I did FOMO into. I saw an update from Slay the Spire, and they are starting to ship, I believe, in April through June. And that's something I backed at $1. And I happened to notice that the late pledge was actually still there. So I dove deeply. I started watching the videos again. I don't know if you guys know what Slay the Spire is. I should probably talk about that first. You probably do. Like if you're watching this, you probably know what Slay the Spire is. And if you don't, go download it. It's only a couple bucks in the App Store. It's unbelievable. It's a digital deck building game that does for deck building what would be really hard to do in the real world, because you know basically you start with a basic deck. I think there's like 4 characters or 3 characters in the game. I can't remember what's in the actual app. They each have kind of a little bit of an asymmetric deck and abilities, but you kind of work your way up this ladder and you're picking which path to go on. There's spots to battle, and there's also spots to kind of rest or buy cards, and you're kind of taking your way all the way up this ladder and kind of beating to get to a big bad boss. And in doing so, you're building your deck. And the deck building mechanic in this thing is so addicting, and it's just so fun to play. I've lost hours. Like I haven't played it in a long time, but I'll start on the couch like on a Sunday morning with some coffee, and all of a sudden it's lunchtime and I don't know where the day is gone. If you're interested in being a human being, maybe you don't download it. Anyways, I mentioned that it does stuff that would be hard to do in real life, which is these insane combos. And there's a lot of math riding behind, you know, in the software that is doing that for you. So I didn't originally back this thing just for that reason. I just didn't understand how it could come to life, and I still don't. I went back and rewatched some videos, and and I'll link a couple that I found helpful in case you're gonna FOMO in with me. I do not recommend it, by the way. This is side note. Mostly I'm doing this because it's going to be good content. I always have that kind of side justification that I can bring it to you all and let you know kind of like what it is. Although I don't know how available this game will be at retail. I mean, maybe it will. Who the heck knows? Where was I? Did you hate that? You just totally forget your train of thought. Anyways, I watched a couple videos and it was overwhelmingly positive. and I just started looking into it, and just the FOMO bite got me. I thought it was just a good opportunity. There's not many opportunities where you can see something delivering or starting to deliver in a month or so, and you can still pledge for it. And I was a sucker. The other part of it is it's also cooperative. That's why it's totally different than the app. I can sit my son down and we can go through an act together. So I'm really interested to see how the co-op mode works in it. But yeah, more to come on Slay the Spire. That's my FOMO pick of the week. And if you're unsure of it and you don't want to late pledge, don't worry, I got you. I'll do some coverage on it as soon as it arrives. All right, what I am playing. Well, I need some coffee first. Is that annoying? Human mouth sounds annoy me, so I'm sorry if that annoyed you. Maybe I'll cut that out. Maybe I won't for the kicks. I don't know. I'm back in Puerto Rico, 1897. I talked about it last week and gave some super early initial impressions. And now I am talking about this game being fucking mean. This game is, especially at 2-player. I don't know. I haven't played it 3 or 4, and it is really tight at 2. I talked about, there's this opportunity to ship goods. In general, you select actions by selecting cards. If you are the person to select that card, you get to do the top action. You also get a benefit. And the benefit of this particular card is it's called the Captain, and it's when you essentially ship your goods off. And I believe the benefit is just to get like 1 more coin or something like that when you use it. However, we found that there's this really strategic kind of, it's tension-filled moment on who's going to select that. Because when you select, you have to pick a boat and put all of one of your goods in that boat. If you don't fill that boat, the other player then has an opportunity to choose the next good that goes in the other boat. So then you could strategically, being the second person, the person that didn't choose that action, put a type of good in the second boat that the other one does not have. And then they can't it goes back and forth, and then they can't go and fill any more in the first boat. So they've basically only been able to ship one type of good, and then you can go and fill the rest of that first boat. I know that probably doesn't make sense. As soon as we started understanding kind of the meta of this game, it created a ton of tension, and we're just watching each other. Who's going to grab that captain? Who's going to grab that captain? There's more to the meta. From what I saw in some forums, there's some broken building combinations, and we haven't explored that yet. We haven't got into any of the expansion buildings or anything like that, but we're enjoying it. Although my wife has beat me every time. I'm calling her the Queen of Puerto Rico right now. I'm trying to goad her into playing more, pump up her ego, because she won't let me stop playing Forest Shuffle. So this game is, it's easily the game we've played more than anything, and I mean anything, in the last 6 weeks. I had this in Shrink hiding in the garage for some time, and I knew this is her type of game. And I knew if I got this thing out, it would be over with. And my history with Forest Shuffle is I had it pre-ordered, and it was on Game Nerds, and I was waiting to kind of like get the, accumulate enough money to get the free shipping. So it sat there for a while. I had played it on BGA, and it kind of run its course with me, and I kind of fell away from it. And I finally got some more stuff in there and brought Forest Shuffle home, and then I kind of hid it away. I frankly wanted her to play other stuff, but I finally broke it out. And I will say the exploration IRL instead of on BGA of this game has been so much more satisfying. First off, the games can be incredibly fast. And I think the box says 60 minutes. And we had a game yesterday that couldn't have been more than 10. And I'm calling it the Pro Leagues, because once you understand these cards, it's just feverishly pop, 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 pop. You're just playing cards, and we're just like, go, 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 go. And that's how I'm trying to get into her head, is through speed. And I'm doing a good job, because this is not this is not Puerto Rico. We're going to say that right now. I am the king of the forest in Forest Shuffle for sure. So what is Forest Shuffle? It's kind of like, I don't know if it's tableau building, but you're playing cards down, and the first cards you're trying to play are trees, a la Arboretum, which is another kind of nasty game that we've enjoyed in the past, and I've since hidden that away because we played that way too much. But the thing here is you play cards, you have multi-use cards, and each card is either kind of a left and right card. You can choose one side and slide it to the left of the tree, and choose the other side and slide into the right of the tree, and they're going to be totally different animals. There's tops and then there's bottoms. So those cards have a top and a bottom, and you either choose to slide it in the top or the bottom. Each card that you play has a cost, and you're paying other cards. The fun part is those cards go into like this center area that anyone can steal from. So sometimes you're doing the math and saying like, oh, like, do I want to actually get rid of this card right now? Well, I can pick it back up this next turn, but the other player might go and pick that up. So that's like the basic core mechanics of it. But why are you playing these down? Every single tree has a different scoring mechanism and or bonus. Sometimes you can draw extra cards. Sometimes you get a certain number of trees. I think it's the chestnut. If you get 7 of them down, you score 49 points. It's this kind of escalating point value. Beaches, if you have 4 or more, each beach is 5 points. Otherwise, it's 0 points. There's cards that are 0 cost to play. I forget what, I think they're birches. 0 cost to play, you draw a card. So that's how you're getting these trees down, and they're 1 point. And there's other effects. There's another tree that gives you 1 point per tree. So you can kind of go in a tree strategy and try to get all those free birches down, and you're not shedding other cards out of your hand, and you can use them to play for other stuff. So that's one kind of meta, and that's something that I've explored and won with. But then there's, butterflies. And if you put a different butterfly on the top of each tree, for each different butterfly, similar to the chestnut tree, you score more and more points. But then you might get a hedgehog that gives you 2 points per butterfly that you put on the bottom of one of your trees. And then on the sides of the trees, you can put in deer. And then if you get a wolf, for every deer, you get 3 points. You can see how this goes, like where there's like this cascading strategy, and it makes itself clear depending on the cards you're getting in your hands. And you're trying to pick kind of early on, like, oh, do I want to go heavy into something? Because it definitely pays. Not kind of being a generalist, it definitely pays getting kind of these multiplication bonuses based upon going in one particular direction. And I mean, it's actually pretty deep. And if this took 60 minutes, I would probably burn it. There's no way I would want to play this game for 60 minutes. We can get 3 games in 60 minutes. However, if it's your first time playing, it could take 60 minutes because you're looking at every card. You don't know what it does. But now we know the moment we see a fern, we're grabbing that fern because that gives you 6 points per like lizard or amphibian. And you want to, that's huge points in those ferns. I think there's only 2 or 3 in the deck. The other part about Forest Shuffle that is cool, and I talked about tension in Puerto Rico, and more side note, I'm figuring out I really like tension in games. That tension, that the thing that gets your heart beating a little bit and your brow sweating. In Forest Shuffle, on the bottom third of the deck, you shuffle 2 winter cards in, and you put another winter card in the top. You don't know when exactly, when the first one comes out, you're like, okay, we're getting ready for the end. And then when the second one comes out, you're like, oh, we're getting even closer. And at any point in the rest of the cards, when that third winter card comes out, game is over. Everyone stops taking turns. That is it. There's nothing left to do. You could have that perfect card that's literally, at the end of the game, you could have all of these deer, 10 deer sitting out there, and you have that one wolf card, and you're waiting to get the 3 cards it takes to pay for it and slide it in. And then that third winter card comes up, and that literally could cost you 30 points or whatever it is. Like it's huge. By the way, games we found from 2, and I had one crazy game, and I may have cheated. It was a wolf deer strategy that got 500 points, but there's a lot of points here. The other downfall around this is points can be really difficult to score. In BGA, you're seeing your point go up as you go along, and in this, you do not see that, which is kind of cool because you don't know how anyone's doing, and you don't kind of get discouraged. You just keep going. But it is tough to score, and you really have to trust your partner because you're not sitting there trying to score both of them. There's some easy things, but the deer and like really the deer are the hardest to score. Anyways, if you have never played this, you have no idea what I'm talking about. But that's Forest Shuffle. There is a expansion that my wife sent me. She sent me a link to BGG. I don't think she's ever looked at BGG in her entire life. This is how obsessed she is. She's like, why don't we have this? So I had never even heard of it, but yeah, there is a four shuffle expansion coming out. I think it's like next year, so I don't have to worry about that. I'll eventually hide this thing. This is the type of game that absolutely has a life cycle in my house, and I basically hide them away, and she'll forget about them, and I have to put something else out. She's the type of person that will play the same game over and over. Obviously, I am more inclined to play new stuff all the time. So anyways, that's for a shuffle. Sleeping Gods, I think I've talked about this in both of the other episodes. I just put up my review. I have 2 playthrough episodes. I have it saved, but I don't know that I'm going to go back and do more episodes. Basically, nobody watched them. I think spoilers are a real deal, or my content sucks. I don't know. But either way, I do have actually, it's not even a review. Let me be real. It's an impressions. And the concept of the video is I played so little of the game, and I was able to get through a campaign. And then I started to play the playthrough that I filmed, and, spoiler alert, my mind changed considerably. After my first playthrough, I thought one thing, and largely positive. So, but the negatives kind of started to fall away a little bit, and I fell into the world a little bit more. And this was my first Sleeping Gods ever. I really, really enjoyed my time with it. I want to go back. I'm torn now because I technically have this game saved, and I don't believe there's no way to have 2 games going. And in case I want to film it, I want to stay at that point, but I probably don't want to film it at this point. It's just not worth the work for me. So I might just go in and just finish that off myself, because I'm excited to see what happens. There's some loose ends out there that I want to explore, and yeah, I just started to appreciate the story and exploration a little bit more in the second playthrough. If you haven't watched my impressions on Sleeping Gods, go ahead and turn it on. I would really appreciate if you did, like, comment, all of that stuff, help out the algorithm. I thought it was a pretty cool video. I'd like more people to see it. However, if it's going to be stuck there in the hundreds of views, whatever, you win some, you lose some. I'm proud of it, so check it out. That's Sleeping Gods Distant Skies. And then 7th Citadel. This probably deserves its own board game secret show. Mostly secret because there's probably some spoilers here. I'm going to discuss the very intro campaign. This campaign portion is played every single time you play it, and it sets up the main story and the jumping off point to future threats. There's these booklets that are called threats that you have to go through, and that's kind of the core of the game. So my spoiler alert is here, and I will put up right here a time in the video for you to jump forward to if you don't want to hear anything about 7th Citadel and its story. I will say there are nice delights and surprises in this first intro, but it's just the tip of the iceberg. So I never played 7th Continent, and my first exposure to even knowing what 7th Continent was looking into and backing Aeon's Trespass Odyssey, because the exploration mechanic, for the most part, was built around this 7th Continent idea. As you start on this square card, every card square in the game, in a map, and you start to explore. As soon as you put down a card, you'll put down these little foggy cards. By the way, none of this is the actual verbiage in the game, but they're essentially act as events, and you have to resolve those. And then once you do, it exposes a new part of the map, gives you a card number, you go grab it, and then the map slowly builds itself over time. And in the beginning of this game, you are, so you are a slave gardener. And what are you gardening? You are helping to keep in check these like mutant plants that have been created by, I believe, the Necro Druids, which is a different peoples than you. And they were created to keep in check this worm like population. I think like the most common worm is 2 times the size of a human, it says. And they did so much burrowing, they created the collapsing lands. And what's happened at the beginning of the story, they've dug out so much underneath the Citadel, it starts to collapse, and you have an opportunity to get out of and escape your prison cell. So you're slowly kind of building the haul in this intro, and by exploring and resolving events, and then there's these little kind of side things that pop up that might possibly give you stuff that you would need, which I wish I would have known by the way, because I made a gosh, I don't even want to actually ruin a couple of the choices I made. I will say I made a choice that gave me a burden that made me rush out and not explore so much. And that burden may or may not have been rewarded. But then come to find out, when I watched somebody else's intro, because I wanted to watch this intro scenario just to make sure I was actually playing it right. Because while the system is pretty simple to run, I think there's a lot of nuances as cards come out and just trying to understand like what they mean and what you're supposed to do. But I mean, the actions are super easy. You just move from card to card. You're paying cards essentially to pass skill checks, including moving. If I move and spend a card, I actually get to keep that card in my hand, and that card then can be used as an effect in the game. Otherwise, as you're doing these skill checks, you're pulling these cards, and there's stars, and you're lining these different stars up to see if you pass the skill check. There's a really kind of clever, sometimes you get half stars or full stars, and the half stars, they all have to match up in one particular row. You can't kind of rotate or flip stuff or whatever it might be. There's also symbols on the cards that relate to kind of like your specialty when you start the game. Like I'm doing a Dex Arcane, a focus character, so those symbols are more prominent on my card. So if I can find some cards that augment these skill checks using those symbols, they're that's how you kind of like get a leg up on the game. But anyways, it became painfully clear in the very beginning that choices actually matter in this thing. I made a choice trying to be a cool guy, and it really hurt me through that entire intro, and I felt it, and I felt like I was being weighed down by this choice this entire time. It stopped me from exploring that then, which is what I was talking about. I found out that I would have gotten some really cool stuff had I had time to actually explore. And I mentioned like this idea of running out of time. That's because as you go through your deck of cards, you have to cycle them back, and you lose life. For every 2 cards, you lose 1 life, I believe it is. And being a pure solo, I started with 45, so I was feeling pretty good. But as you go through these skill checks or battles, you're using a lot of these cards, because it's your decision in a lot of cases how many cards to pull. You're just trying to do the math in your head and figure out like, will I get enough success based upon all of the augments I have? Because you could have like, item augments and all kinds of different cards in which might help you pass these skill checks, or you might not. And some of the skill checks, you can also only use a certain number of cards. And a lot of times you're like, it's impossible. Unless I have some way to augment this skill check, there's no way I'm going to get through it. So that's kind of like the gameplay. That's the kind of a crackhead's version of a gameplay impressions. But the other thing that struck me with this is the world. And as you build out this map, the art and the way it fits together is so satisfying and beautiful in like a lo-fi dark way. You're clearly in I think it's a post-apocalyptic dark fantasy world, and that's what it feels like. In fact, I do recommend, by the way, playing with the music on Serious Pulp's website. It is sort of terrifying and really creates the atmosphere here. And sitting next to Sleeping Gods, as good as it was, my very, very early feelings towards exploration is so much more positive here. I'm so much more excited to turn over and actually terrified to turn over the next card to see how it's going to hurt me. Because by the way, it is instant death. Like if I run out of health points, there's no coming back. You start it all over. So back to that theme of tension that we were talking about earlier, there is tension here. Because if I start at 45 points, if I'm killing off 10 points of health every time I recycle my deck in there, I have very little time to spare. So I have to find stuff along my journey to augment that. And if I turn over the wrong card and it's a mandatory battle, for example, that, makes me run through my deck, I could be dead and at any moment. And I can't remember where I heard it. I think someone had said you could be 50 hours in your campaign and just pass away and you start over. I think that is polar opposite from what Sleeping Gods is doing, because you don't ever feel that tension, and I felt it here. It also is giving me some vibes, some Elden Ring vibes, and I don't know if you've played Elden Ring. If anyone's a video gamer out there, it's my favorite game of all time. The feeling of exploration on the first playthrough of that game is incredible. You start off in this early area called Limgrave, and you're really searching for anything. You're starting off as just this kind of awful character that can't get through anything, and you have to build yourself up. And there's so many points of wonder in the whole game, but that first area that you can just wander around. I spent hours and hours and hours going through this first area that ends up being 3% of the entire game or something, and it was just so fun to discover, to flip rocks and see what's in there, to go into the caves and see what's going on, go into these graveyards and explore. And I'm kind of getting that vibe here with 7th Citadel. So I am going through that. If anyone wants to see a playthrough, there are some playthroughs on the intro scenario out there. I can put my flavor to it if anyone's interested there. I would really like to make a video on this, but I'm kind of scarred from Sleeping Gods. I don't know if I'll have much success there. Either way, I might do it either way. I don't even know. There, in honor of my enjoyment of 7th Citadel, somewhere through this video, there is a 3-digit number hidden. If you can find that number and be the first to comment, I'm going to give you card 99. Who knows what card 99 is? Nobody really knows. And it's in honor of 7th Citadel because you have to look at each and every one of these cards, because there might be a hidden number that leads to a card that you can pick up, and it gives you a little confirmation symbol in the corner, whether that is the right card or not, and you're allowed to flip it. And that's just how you find secrets hidden throughout this world. So yeah, look for that 3-digit number and you will be rewarded with card 99. I do not know what exactly that would be, but I just want to see who can find that number. So that's 7th Citadel. All right, here we go. Main topic time. I'm getting pumped up here. All right, so like I said, I am painfully introverted. I have a hard time making new friends. I have a very small game group. The larger, broader types of games that I can get to the table with 4 people become very slim. Nobody is as insane about board games as I am. I have forced my wife into more complex games, but it really is limited when you're only 2 players. So there are a certain number of games out there that I just can't get to the table. And unfortunately for me, I think it might be some of my favorite games ever if I was able to get them to the table. So first and foremost, I want to know what those games are for you. Like what's something that you either own or wish you own that you just wish you could get to the table? Am I the only one out there? Does everyone else out there have these broad game groups that you can do, basically play anything? If so, maybe don't tell me about that. I would probably feel sad. Make me feel included, please. Or if you are in Western Washington and you want to play any of these games, let me know. Maybe we can make that happen. So first and foremost, John Company 2nd edition. I don't even know how one gets to the point in their board gaming career to look at a game like this and say, wow, it really makes my eyes light up. So I bought this after watching a playthrough on Heavy Cardboard, and I had mentioned last week that Heavy Cardboard is my outlet for games like this. In fact, Edward and crew over at Heavy Cardboard have inspired this because they have produced many of the games that I wish I could play if I just had friends. Either way, I watched for the very first time a playthrough on Heavy Cardboard here, and the thing that struck me first was this super heavy theme, but the use of this almost whimsical Baroque art style and pastel colors for player pieces. It's just the juxtaposition of those two things kind of put together. All of a sudden had me going like, what is this? And then come to find out that this is it's based upon a very brutal time in our history, world history, where the British East India Company essentially kind of ruled the world. I believe it had the largest standing army at the time. I think it was multiple times bigger than the actual British army at the time, and it was all to facilitate a monopoly of trade. Dude, how did I just get an emergency call? That sucks. 911's gonna probably be calling me. That's stupid. Oh my gosh, where was I? That totally ruined it. I was like sitting on my my phone wrong. I hate that I've done that multiple times where I'm holding the wrong buttons on the iPhone and it all of a sudden is giving me like an SOS call. Oh my gosh. Okay. Anyways, where was I? So basically it deals with a time in history that was pretty crazy. There was a state-sponsored British East India Company that was essentially it colonized the East Indies, and I think there was parts of Asia as well, and it created a standing army to help deal with all of that. And it did all of this to basically create a trade monopoly and make these people really, really rich. And these people are the people in the game. So first and foremost in this game, you probably, if you're sensitive on subjects like this and it just makes you feel bad to kind of role play as these, awful individuals, skip forward. You're probably not going to like this. But I'm really interested in historical games in general, especially ones in which they're so thoughtful and complex. And this particular game certainly is. You are, in a lot of games that deal with kind of politics and economies, you probably would be separate companies vying against each other. In this, you're all in the same company. You are representing different families, and those different families are vying for control. I mean, I guess it's control of the company, but you need these other families or players to actually get anything done. There's basically everything is up for negotiation in this game. And that's what really struck me in the playthrough, was that they were negotiating absolutely everything. You have family members you're trying to retire and gain fancy estates. Like it's you really are role playing the family in a company and through generations of control. And this, in real life, this company existed, I think, from 1600 to like 18 something. Like it was over 200 years that this company existed. And really, it was just, state sponsored trade monopoly colonialism. But I digress. This game is best at 4 to 5. I think I can get this to the table myself as a solo game, and I might do it. But the thing I'm yearning for is that negotiation and the stories that are created. And that's why I really like watching playthroughs on stuff like this, is you really create a story as you play. It's not just multiplayer solitaire where you're kind of putting pieces down on the board and trying to score the most points. You are actually role playing these families and negotiating over all kinds of different stuff to win the game and score points. So I just found it to be so different than anything else I had ever seen. So I bought it thinking that, I would make some friends someday, and I've yet to do so. In fact, I loved it so much, I actually designed this 3D insert that nobody's ever seen. So I'll show it to you like right here, right now. I'm actually pretty proud of it. I took so long on it. I don't think I've designed another one since. If anyone's interested, I might have the STL files somewhere. I'd have to look around on that. But either way, that is John Company's 2nd edition. I wish I had people to play it. I might get solo, and it may show up on the channel at some point. If you're interested on a solo playthrough / review, let me know. If you want to learn more about John Company, there's tons of really great videos on there. There's no secret of a game and how great it is and how many people love it. Shut Up and Sit Down, I think, just recently did a very positive sort of review, but I recommend check out Phasing Player. I really enjoyed his discussion on John Company. And Dads and Dice just did a solo playthrough. Check that out if you're interested. And that's John Company, 2nd edition. All right, next up is, I think I might not be the only one here. I think there's a lot of kind of secret Root wannabes out there like myself. So Root was another really early one for me, and I kind of started to get into this hobby. Actually, I found a couple of games, and then I started going to YouTube just to learn a little bit more, and I found Quackalope. And at that point in Quackalope's kind of career, he was doing a lot of Root playthroughs. I found that one and the player interaction so interesting, first and foremost. And that's before I really understood kind of like what Root was. By the way, for any of you that are living under a rock, Root is best at higher player counts, dudes on a map battle game, but it's done with cute little woodland creature animals. And that is what is so intriguing, I think, from so many people out of the gates. And each player has a faction. Each faction is basically totally asymmetric, meaning they do things totally different. Cats start with a big presence on the board, and the birds are trying to invade and take over. The Woodland Alliance is trying to create revolts and clearings and spread through kind of like guerrilla warfare. Then you have this vagabond that's a single character that's like slipping into the woods and out and trying to, like, you know, help other characters or hurt other characters to benefit itself. And then you get into the expansions, and there's like otters that trade with people, and what are they, ravens, the Corvid conspiracy, where they plant bombs. They're kind of like terrorists and blow clearings up. There's just so many unique things going on in this game. It's another one that kind of creates, I think, a story around a table, you know, if you play it, especially with the same game group over and over. So I have Root. I will always have Root in hopes I find some friends, and I have played Root. I've played it online a decent amount of times, and I got it to the table. 2 players with my wife. 2 players kind of sucks, and I tried to play the Clockwork factions, and they were just a lot of work. So I just kind of gave up on all of that, and I made my kids play a couple times, and that was not that fun either. So then I went to the app and I started playing that, and that's a little different, just because you're not sitting there talking to people. You're not, the table talk isn't there. And I yearn to be a part of this community. And speaking of community, last year I watched coverage on RootCon, and it's actually fairly close to me. So I'm thinking like, oh, maybe I do make the trip there. But just to see the metas and the community, there's a podcast for it. There's a really great Discord related to Root as well. And I felt like that was so appealing, is getting so deep and in love with the game that you are chatting about it all day or going to a convention just for that one game. Just seemed so appealing to me. And it also isn't a type of game that I think shines when you just play for a couple sessions with somebody. You know, the teaching games, I believe, are probably pretty rough based upon my experience. And it doesn't start to shine unless you find people that love it, that are willing to explore the meta and all of the different factions and such. And I just don't have that. If you want to learn more about Root, I've linked Quackalope's playthrough. That's one of my favorites there. I also think something that's kind of cool is to understand the complexity and depth here. And I want to shout out Nebuchadnezzar as probably one of the most unique creators I've found, and I think deserves a ton more recognition. So I've linked that channel, and they've done a bunch of different deep dives on factions that are, in my mind, so funny and entertaining. And, you know, just from like a creative standpoint, I just really enjoy that work. And you know, they're highly visual and really greatly edited. And that's something like on my channel I'm very passionate about. So if you want to get a little idea of how deep this rabbit hole goes, go check out Nebuchadnezzar. I'm a big fan, by the way, if you see this, you know, awesome work. So that's Root. Next up, this one is really climbing on BGG. I believe I just watched, some coverage that recently came out, and they were pointing out that it was climbing a ton, and it was already at 110 on the all-time list. And I looked yesterday, and it was at 91. We're talking about Hegemony. It's not Hegemony. Oh my gosh, like my brain has to think so hard to say this word. I don't know why. Hegemony. Oh my gosh, I literally was thinking about this last night on how to actually say it. This is one that I always say wrong, and even if I hear someone say it, I have a hard time, like, for whatever reason my brain doesn't work that way. Anyways, you get it. It's this game right here. This is a class warfare sim. There's a working class, middle class, capitalist, the state. You can be any of them. Card play to get your will done. They're highly asymmetric. You know, the working class is working in the factories. Capitalists kind of run the businesses, and the middle class is doing kind of the same thing as both the working and the capitalists, riding the line between the two. And of course, the state is making all of the rules. However, there's a balance to all of it. and everyone has competing and then also slightly overlapping priorities. It's another political kind of sim, but this one's much more mainstream, I think, than something like John Company. It just looks so cool. I mean, I own it. I started to crack the rule book in hopes that I can get it to the table with my wife, and it is certainly playable at 2, and I think it's okay at 2. I think it's best at 4 from what I saw in BGG. I just don't know that I'll get her into it. I'm going to try. There is no solo mode, so I have no hope like in John Company to at least play that solo. I've got to get this thing to the table with her. This is a game that I am very excited to play. Heavy Cardboard, by the way, has another playthrough there, which I'll link in the notes. Also recently, Shelfside had come out with a not review, I believe it was, and something along the lines of crazy asymmetric. He does a really good job. Obviously, it's great channel. Does a really good job of explaining kind of what it is and the nuance there. So if something like that is sounds good to you and you have never heard about this game, go check those videos out. This is another one that I think might be a new classic, but what do I know? I haven't even played the thing. I don't have any friends. I can't get this thing to the table. My wife will fall asleep if I try to teach her this, and that's true. Every time I start explaining rules, no matter what the game is, she starts to yawn, and something like this certainly would make her yawn. Yep, so that's Hegemony. Hegemony. Don't worry. Don't correct me. I'm gonna go look up the phonetics when I get done with this. All right, next up. Okay, 18xx. Anything 18xx. So my gaming career, I typically don't cite this game as a beginning, but it was truly the beginning. It was Ticket to Ride. This was years and years ago. This was my first experience with modern board gaming. My wife fell in love with it. I fell in love with it. The cutthroat nature of stealing routes and blocking, and we really played that way. We did not play nice, and if you're losing the game, you're really just going to go and start to block routes just for the fun of it. We played that game into the ground to the point where I have hidden it, like, you know, Force Shuffle is about to be hidden, but just the route building was fun. Enter 18xx. These are I've watched a ton of playthroughs with Heavy Cardboard, of course, and there's plenty of others, and there's lots of really great videos on kind of what 18xx is. But the thing that gets me is not necessarily the route building, but the market dynamics. I've always been really interested in, I don't know, economies and markets and games. In fact, I've played lots of video games in my life, and all the sports games now, MLB The Show, NBA 2K, and Madden, all have this mode that deals with like building your own fantasy team. And it is complete racket. These companies basically rob our kids and your husbands out there but by selling packs of digital cards that are completely worthless 4 months in the future just to build the digital team that can perform better and better in the game. And I will say it is so addictive and so fun. But the thing that I found the most fun about it is working the market. All of these have a market, whether it be trading or kind of selling off your cards. These cards become really expensive with in-game currency. In fact, there's black market for these in-game currencies to be able to buy the players you want. It becomes so expensive because some of these packs are like $10 for one pack of cards that you're not going to get anything from. Anyways, there's inefficiencies in the market that you can exploit by buying cards low and then eventually selling them high, or there's all these kind of different market methods that are out there. There's this whole community around this thing. And that's something I got really obsessed with. In fact, embarrassingly, to the point that I made so many transactions in Madden. This was 2 years ago. I was actually banned from using the auction house. I fought it tooth and nail, and they said, screw you, we can do what I want. And you checked a box on an agreement, and we just don't want you to be able to get the team without paying us hundreds of dollars. So anyways, I might be a little salty from that. Also slightly embarrassed that I got banned from a video game. I was not doing anything illegal. Everything was within the rules. They were wrong. I am going to talk to a lawyer about that someday. Anyways, markets in games are something that I really like. And then you combine that with the route building of a train game. it just gets me really excited. I don't know. I mean, these, like, you look at these things and I don't know. I guess if I back up, I don't know how long, years ago and looked at one of these games and said, you were going to be really excited to play this someday, I would say there's no chance. I would have bet my yearly salary that I would never be making a video about how excited I am to play an 18xx game and just looking at them. But the buying stock in companies and then manipulating to make that stock become more and more appealing to then have other players buy it and it actually go up. I mean, that is right up my alley. I would love to play an 18xx game. And unfortunately, this is basically 4 players. There's a couple forums that say like, these are okay at 2 players, okay at 2 players. It's all about the market, and you really need 4 players or so or more to kind of get that market humming. If you want to learn more about 18xx games, the best video I found on that, no pun included, it done, I think it's like 3 years ago, a video on it. I have it linked below, and it's a pretty incredible, and I believe it was a year-long project that they did this kind of exploration of 18xx games and what exactly they are. There's some history in there. A really great primer if you're interested. All right, and that is 18xx games. Number 5 on the list is Nemesis. Any Nemesis. I just want to get a Nemesis to the table. I know these play at lower player counts, but they're all bested for. Let's just be real. The theming is not gonna get my wife to the table. I need a group here. So Nemesis is a semi co-op survival game. You're stuck on a ship and you're trying to get off. There's aliens everywhere. You're trying to not make noise. There's some asymmetry on characters and cards. There's different specialties to help you get through all the different challenges that are on the ship. However, there is a hidden traitor mechanic, and that person might screw you and you be the only person in the pod to jump off the ship. But what a cool concept. It reminds me a little bit of Mission Catastrophe. That is something I can get to the table. That is something I can get 4 players behind just because it's a little more cutesy. That game, if you haven't played it, is wonderful. I think it's out of print. I made a trade on BGG for it, and I'll never get rid of it. It's just a blast. You're moving around a ship, trying to fix rooms, and the other things will blow up, and you got to get all these things in place throughout the ship to activate the pods to get off. But you get to the point where the person with the right key next to the right pod is the one that's going to get off the ship, and everyone else is going to die. So I at least have an outlet to get that. But here the theme is so cool. The alien theme is awesome. The only way for me to get that right now is through Final Girl. What is it? A great scenario. The Evomorph scenario is awesome. Total alien movie vibes here. But you know, the item cards, the weapons, the augmentations, this is just seems like a blast. It would be a great night if I could just find some people to play Nemesis. Yeah, I mean, most of you probably know what Nemesis are, and most people have played it. This is just a beloved game. The new one, I believe, that's yet to actually ship deals a little bit more with battling the aliens. In most of the others, I believe you're just trying to survive and get away and not make noise. A little more kind of a stealth adventure. Regardless, I wish I could only play Nemesis if only I had some friends. All right, that is the end of my list here. That is the 5 games I wish I had friends to play with. Yeah, that's the episode. If you've made it this far, I would love for you to react. What are the games that are on your list that you just can't get to the table because you don't have the people to play with? I'd like this show to evolve more into a conversation, and let's for now, let's do it in the comments. I want to hear from you. That's how I'm going to measure success of this show, is what types of conversations I'm able to create, and I'm going to get in them with you. This is a secret show. Not many people listen. I have plenty of time to talk with you down in the comments. So let's get it going right now. And with that said, have a great week. I will probably be back next Monday for you. So if you enjoy it, let me know. Take it easy.